On the latest episode of the PCT podcast, we are joined by highly experienced coach Tony Elliott. He speaks to us around his playing experience, the natural progression into coaching, and the role and responsibilities of the modern day goalkeeper.
Tony, welcome to PCT podcast. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks, Mark. Great to be here. Looking forward to our conversation, and I'm looking forward to getting back to football and in the real world. It's been a long layoff, and I've kept myself busy, but obviously, I'm looking forward to getting back to coaching on the pitch, and hopefully that'll come soon.
Yeah, there's nothing better than actually being out on the grass and doing a bit of coaching. For those that may be unaware, who may have lived under a rock at some point, can you just tell us sort of the roles that you hold at the minute, and how lockdown sort of affected that?
Yeah, well, I up until about a month ago, I was head of goalkeeping at Bristol City Women. Once the decision was made to obviously not complete the league, I decided to step down from that role purely and simply due to the amount of travel I was doing from my home in Birmingham. It was becoming, too much for me, too much for my family. I wasn't able to give, my full self to the role. It was like 1,000 miles a week on some weeks. So it was a lot of time in the car, and I've made a conscious decision that I'm going to be working from home or closer around the Midlands now. So hopefully something, will come up very soon. But I'm still very involved with the FA as well. So obviously I'm lead goalkeeping coach for the England blind squad, and lead goalkeeping coach for the England men's deaf 11-a-side squad. So those are the sort of roles that I'm in at the moment. And as I say, hopefully be back in at club level in some way, shape or form in the very near future. I'm in conversations with a number of organisations at the minute, and hopefully that will get itself sorted, and we'll see where we go from there.
Fantastic. And obviously, before we go on to coaching that you're on at the minute, I just wanted to go through obviously your career to date, and in terms of a playing career, nearly 200 league appearances for a range of teams, Huddersfield, Cardiff. At what age did you start playing, and when did you realise you liked being a goalkeeper?
Yeah, well, I think, the numbers there, I mean, I played nearly 250 competitive professional games. I think you've got to throw cup games into that equation as well. So it only shows league games, I think, on Wikipedia sites, things like that. But, so around 250 competitive professional games. I think from a very early age, my father was involved in men's football in Birmingham back in the 70s. Obviously, as a young lad, I used to go to most training sessions with him. Back in them days, it was a little bit different to what it is now. The safeguarding and things like that, health and welfare of players was a little bit different. So, kids of 7 and 8 used to join in with the grown men and get involved in practices sometimes even. It was quite strange, but compared to what it is now. But so literally I just used to go in goal, and some of the lads used to take pot shots at me, not to the point where it was of danger to me. Obviously they were sensible and careful with it, but and then obviously at school I got the opportunity one morning. The school goalkeeper was ill, and a few of my friends came and knocked the door. I used to live my house backed onto the school where I used to go, and the game was not far from kicking off, and they needed a goalkeeper. So obviously I was quite a big lad at that age, 9 or 10 years old, and they asked me to come round and play. So I went in, had a decent game, and unfortunately for the other goalkeeper, who didn't get back into the team, so they kept me in. And that was it. From then on, obviously, I was a goalkeeper, and I guess in terms of my pathway, the rest is history. I got picked up by Birmingham City, amongst other teams. I was scouted by a lot of different clubs, but chose to sign for Birmingham City as a schoolboy, turning down the likes of Aston Villa and Manchester United and one or two others, and signed for Birmingham. So that was it really. And then obviously there's a list of clubs that I played for as a professional.
During that sort of playing career, Did you feel any extra pressure during your games at all, or was it just business as normal as a kid?
I think, yeah, you do. You feel pressure. And I think as a youngster, obviously I represented England at schoolboy and youth level and played in some unbelievable games in front of huge crowds. I played at Wembley 3 times, and that was a massive honour to play internationally for my country. And in those games there was 60, 70,000 in the 2 schoolboy internationals, and then when I played for England youth at Wembley before the Charity Shield in 1985, there was, I think, 95,000 people there for the Everton Man United game. So, yeah, I mean, in those days, you played for the love of it, and I guess you were nervous, but you didn't feel pressured because it was developmental. So there was no real, nothing, no real consequence to the result. It was just there representing the country, enjoying it. So the pressure was just to play well, I guess. But as a professional, it's a complete change because it's a business, and it's your job, and you've got to perform well. Otherwise, you don't get contracts. You don't stay in the team. And obviously, especially nowadays where, the PLCs run football, and the businesses run the game. If you don't perform and you don't do your job and you concede sloppy goals as a goalkeeper, you're costing the business money, and so forth. The pressure comes from there then, as well as, the pressure from wanting to play well. So it does change, from being a youngster loving the game and playing it for the love of it. Yes, you do play for the love of it when you're professional, but obviously you're also mindful that it is a business and you've got to perform to make sure that the team does well, stays in the league it is, and it can earn the revenue that it requires to stay afloat. So added pressure, I guess.
I mentioned that it's quite a special position in terms of being a goalkeeper. Do you feel that goalkeepers now, especially in terms of analysis, are under more pressure than other positions?
Yeah, of course they are. I mean, everything nowadays is scrutinised. I guess I have to be careful what I say because, with social media and things now, whatever you say, I guess somewhere you're going to upset somebody, and it gets to the point where I think sometimes you are a little bit worried and afraid of having an opinion because people can take it in the wrong context. They can take it in the wrong way. You might by commenting on the simplest of things or on a goalkeeper's action, you might ultimately put people under pressure because that then is seen by a third party, and they may look at that and go, well, why isn't the individual that we're working with seeing that, blah, 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 blah. So, everything's scrutinised. So there is added pressure from that. But at the end of the day, if you're in the top level, then, you've got to expect that your work is going to be analysed, is going to be scrutinised. And more times than not, it will be the errors that are analysed and scrutinised and not so much the great stuff. Yes, I understand that there has to be balance, in terms of the way things are analysed, and that's in any walk of life. I guess you want a balanced argument and debate. But I think from my point of view, if you are at the top level, then you've got to expect for people to sort of want and demand the best from you because you are reputedly and supposed to be the best, in the game or whatever it is. So, there is an expectation level to be able to perform. But as I say, if you're going to play at the top level and you're going to be in the public eye and scrutinised, you're going to have to be prepared to deal with that.
I mean, now, as a highly and vast experienced coach, Tony, when was it you first dipped your toes into the coaching world?
Quite early. I think, I found a liking for coaching. So, I was very lucky as a young player, young pro, to work with some fantastic coaches, and you kind of get an idea of what it's like and what it takes to be a top level coach, and you feed off that, and I think you'd be naive and silly not to. So, you know, working around people that I did, it sort of gave me a little bit of a bug. So I think literally, you know, whenever I got the chance and whenever I was offered the opportunity, people, you know, because I was playing professionally, people would ask me to drop in and do the odd coaching session. And then, you know, generally the clubs I was involved in, I would then try and sort of spend a little bit of time, you know, downtime that I had, working with the youngsters of those clubs, and, you know, going and doing the odd session at their centres of excellence or academies or wherever it was I was, you know, going to be involved with, and obviously local clubs as well. I think really as well, it was just trying to give a little bit of something back. So I think I always had a plan in my mind that if I wasn't going to play the game at some point for some reason, that I would go into coaching, because if you can't play, coaching's the next best thing. So I think for me, it was just a natural continuum that, you know, when I did unfortunately retire from playing at 30, that I went straight into coaching, and as I say, 20 years later, the rest is history, you know.
Yeah. Something I like to ask our coaches who've had a playing career as well. Was there ever a moment when you were playing and dipping your toes into the coaching world, it changed the way you looked at the game and the way that you played it?
I think obviously as a goalkeeper, you get a fantastic view of the game. You know, you get that 180 view of the game, because you are sort of at the back, and sort of everything's in front of you. You know, you don't play like a midfield player, you're playing a 360 world, you're playing a 180 world. So you get a great view of the game from there. Obviously, you know, as a coach, you tend to spend more of it from the sideline, but and from sort of central areas of the pitch. But as a goalkeeper, you can't help but learn and see, you know, how the game ebbs and flows and changes, and tactically recognising, you know, and understanding strategies and things. But I think, you know, obviously as a goalkeeper, the back pass rule, when that changed, that was a massive game changer for football, and for goalkeepers in particular. You know, we literally had to become players with gloves on overnight, you know, and it took, you know, a number of years for the goalkeeping fraternity to sort of get used to that. And I think it was a change that was needed, and I think it did change for the better. But it has now changed the way that we develop our goalkeepers, most definitely, in terms of, you know, tactically, technically, and you know, across the elements of development, I call them, you know, and I've mentioned two there, and psychologically, physically, and socially, we have to now develop our goalkeepers much more holistically than we ever have done, because there's so much more involved in the game. But it's not one particular element that affects the goalkeeper in any one given moment. We have to look at so many different things, and that's hugely important for coaching now. So I think the back pass rule was the game changer. Obviously, they've affected the offside rules now, you know, and I think a lot are still trying to learn how they work, and you know, again, that changes the dynamic for the goalkeeper, you know. So compared to, you know, what used to be, you're either offside or you're not, you know, and now there's so many grey areas that you know, it does change the way that we work and think about developing our keepers. So those for me would be the pivotal moments. But obviously, when I played, it was the back pass rule, and that completely changed the dynamic forever.
I mean, can you remember the first session you delivered as a coach? How old you were and how you felt delivering? And do you remember what age group it was?
I can't remember for definite. I know I was probably still in my teens, if I'm being honest. And I think it would probably have been working with quite young goalkeepers. You know, when I was at Hereford, I did get asked to do some work with a local club from Worcester. So I think it was probably around them times. I think I was always a confident individual. I don't think that I was a sort of introverted person. Although I come across quite calm and you know, I don't know, I guess some people call me a big teddy bear at times, you know, but that's me. I've got a long fuse, I guess, you know, in terms of my temperament. But I'm just calm. I love what I do. I enjoy what I do, but I have belief in what I do. You know, I believe in the way I work, in my philosophies, in my methodology. You know, and I truly believe that I could drop in on any you know, kind of group of individuals and deliver a session. You know, as long as I got a little bit of time to sort of prepare and get ready for that, and deliver it, you know, in the right way, in the right manner. So I don't think I would have gone in with trepidation and fear. It would have been obviously nervous, but you know, looking to enjoy it and just to deliver the message in my way. And that's the way I still work now. I haven't changed, and you know, for me, that's where the experience started, and it's kicked on from there ever since.
Being a coach now, looking back as a young player and, you know, as a pro, did you ever take place on the importance of what the coaches were saying, or was it a case of turning up, getting through the session and match day being the business end?
Yeah, of course, you know, for your preparation and for you know, being ready to go and face the next opponent, you obviously listen and tuned into what the coaches were saying. That goes without saying, of course. You know, you have to, because that's your job as a player. But I think you take the important chunks, and that's what I would have zoned in on and hooked onto. I think as you get older and more experienced, you'll understand what are the most important parts of those bits of information that you need to take on board. And obviously you become more self-aware, and you understand more what your role and requirements are, depending on you know, or roles and requirements are from the coach and of the team, you know, relevant to your position. So you tend to sort of have more of a self-awareness around that. But yeah, I think you know, I've worked with so many different coaches over the years, all kinds of different styles and methods, and you know, ways of connecting with people and building relationships. And you know, everyone was different, and some were great, some were not so great. And I think as a coach, all I've done over the years is learn to absorb the great bits, the good bits from coaches, and maybe just deflect the not so good bits, or you know, the bits of the parts of them that won't sit and fit with me, and I kind of deflect those. So, but you also remember them. You don't forget them. You store them. It's like you know, your hard drive on your computer. You've got files for everything, and that's what I tend to do with information and detail. You know, and I'll also note things down. You know, I don't keep a stringent diary or anything. You know, and people often ask me about session plans, and you know, have you got a massive catalogue? And you know, I do write my session plans up more times than not, daily. But it's not necessarily that I keep them all in a huge file. If I'd have done that, I'd have probably no room in the house, if I'm being honest. You know, I'd be stockpiled with sheets of paper everywhere. A lot of what I do is in here, you know, and you know, I can literally, you know, if I'm working with a head coach, and you know, we'll be working on a certain aspect during the week, and we'll walk into a team meeting, and you know, I'll get an idea of what the coach is going to do that day, and quickly I can, you know, put together a session, you know, geared around that work, whether it be in possession or out of possession, and that will, you know, I can design a session quickly that will help the goalkeepers prepare for that session in the time that I have with them prior to them joining in with the team. So again, it's just about belief and confidence in knowing what you're doing, and then having belief in being able to construct, you know, a practice, a session, delivery, and then make sure that it links, you know, to what next for the goalkeepers that you're working with. So that's, I think a lot of it comes down to confidence and belief in what you do. And over the years, that's what I've built up. But I've also taken that from other coaches that I've worked with. And, you know, as I say, you store things, you build things up in memory, and you know, you can always fall back on them when you need to.
I mean, there seems to be a greater importance now placed on coaching with the greater detail going into planning and preparation. How has this changed during your career as a coach?
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously as a goalkeeper coach, we've become, I would suggest, over the last, I guess, 8 to 10 years, a much more multifunctional individual. We're not now I would hope anyway, not now just regarded as the individual that goes over to a certain area of the field and does an hour and a half with the goalkeepers, and then the goalkeepers then go in with the team, and that's the goalkeeper coach's job done. I'd like to think we're not thought of or considered in that way anymore. I know some goalkeeper coaches still like to work that way, but that's their choice. That's not my choice. I like to think that our goalkeepers now need to be integrated much more in with the team, rather than spending every moment they possibly can in isolation with the goalkeeper coach. And I think we need not to be precious and possessive over that now as goalkeeper coaches. But I think, in that sense, my view is that, we have our time with the goalkeepers. And then, we allow them to sort of work in with the team to get into decision-making situations as much as they possibly can. And that therefore helps them prepare with the team and build up relationships with their teammates, and continue that connection that so very much is needed during game situations. So that's my thoughts on that.
I mean, you've had many a role, including an assistant manager in the past with, you say, local non-league sides, and amongst many others. Is there any particular role that you prefer over the other?
No, as I say there, I probably didn't give as much detail in that last question as I would. But as I say, the goalkeeper coach now have become much more of that multifunctional individual, like you said there. I've been assistant coach, I've been goalkeeper coach, and kitman for some teams, and done all kinds of jobs just to make sure that roles are fulfilled. But I think, the goalkeeper coach now, we're very much part of the organisation and setup of sessions, of practices, more times than not, in particular at the top levels of the game. The goalkeeper coach generally would look after the set plays, definitely defensively, and very often in an attacking sense. So, that's part of the learning that has to go on in terms of, personal development from the goalkeeper coach, is learning more about set plays. Even to the point now where, we look at and work with, the defensive unit, not just with the goalkeeper, because obviously the goalkeeper and the defensive unit are very much, a team within the team. So I think it's very important that the goalkeeper coach links in with that. But in terms of, which role I prefer, like I've said to you, I'm confident enough, to have a go at being the goalkeeper coach alone, being the assistant coach if needed. I did that with the England cerebral palsy squad. We went to Rio in 2016 for the Paralympics, and I was assistant coach and goalkeeper coach to Keith Webb, and we built a very successful working relationship on that basis, and Keith had ultimate trust in myself to sort of work with him, back him, and we took the team to great heights, and that was a very successful relationship. So as I say, for me now, goalkeeper coach, yes, but I now consider myself to be a football coach that specialises in goalkeeping. And I think the terminology we use now might need to change as we move forward with the goalkeeper coach. It's we are specialists in what we do, but also we are multifunctional now, and we have to be considered that.
Yeah, it's a great point, and something maybe I need to change in my outset there with you saying there you're not just the goalkeeper coach, you are a football coach. And you mentioned there something I'd like to speak about, the experience in Rio 2016. Did you ever think, as a young boy playing football in the park, that one day you'd be out in Rio representing the CP team for England?
No, look, it's for me, there's no higher honour than representing your country, and I did it as a player, at youth, at schoolboy and youth level. Didn't quite get there in terms of full level, which is something that I'd have loved to have done, but didn't happen. But then to do it as a coach, not just with one squad, but with numerous squads. The England futsal squad, the England women's deaf futsal squad, the England blind squad, cerebral palsy squad, now the England men's deaf squad. So 5 or 6 squads representing my country as a coach. But the pinnacle of that, in terms of the disability formats of the game that I've worked in, has to be the Paralympics. And in 2015, I was working with both the blind and the CP squad, and we were both squads were trying to get to Rio. Both formats of the game were Paralympic sports at that time. Only blind football is now. They've moved to CP football away from it. Unfortunately, the blind squad didn't qualify. We didn't quite get there. We got beaten in the semi-finals of the Euros, which were the qualifiers for Rio. But with the CP squad, we managed. We got into the top 8 in the World Championships, and that therefore qualified us to Rio. And from my point of view, when you look at prestige tournaments and events, you've got the World Cup, which is probably the biggest sporting event in the world. You then probably got the Olympics. Some would argue the Olympics is bigger, but in a football sense, for me, obviously, I'm always going to say the World Cup. You got the Olympics, but then for me, your third is the Paralympics. There's no bigger event than that in terms of disability sport. And for me to actually go, as a representative of the nation, as a member of the support staff for the team, it was an unbelievable life happening. And to actually go, to Rio, stay in the Olympic Village for 3.5 weeks, I think it was, to play in fantastic arenas, and just be around the whole event and the excitement and, a 24/7 ebb and flow of people around the Olympic Village. And it was just amazing, and something that I'll never forget, something that, no one can ever take away from me. And to this day, every so often, I'll go into the suitcase that I've got full of GB clothing and everything, and have a look and just remember, the good times and the good points. But more than anything, just being there with the lads, seeing the joy on their faces as they play in games that are going to be the highest level in their lives. And what a wonderful event that was to be part of, and something that I'll remember for the rest of my life.
I mean, you have touched on it there, which was sort of my next question, is that your experience ranges from the pro game. You mentioned the women's game, working with the Great Britain Paralympic team. Double-edged sort of question here. How have these experiences shaped your outlook as a coach through those experiences, and just how proud is it to pull on those 3 lions and represent your country?
Yeah, well, I'll flip it. I mean, the first one, there's no prouder patriot than yours truly. It's got to be your drive as an athlete and as a coach to want to get to the highest levels of the game. And there's no higher level than representing your country. So for me, to put the 3 lions on, both as a player and as a coach, there's no greater achievement from my point of view. And as I said, nobody can take that away from you. When your time is up on the planet, and you can't forget that it's done, it's there. But to do it across so many squads, so many formats, from my point of view, it's just been a joy. And to build up, I'm in the hundreds of caps, I guess, in terms of games as a player and coach now. And I've enjoyed every single one of them. Whether winning or not winning. For me, yes, you obviously want to win, but every time you put the shirt on to go and stand on the touchline, and support the team, it's just a joy. I think the big thing for me, and something that I'm very proud of, is it has showed my adaptability and my diversity and capability to adapt across all the different formats. It's not easy, going from 1 minute being involved in 11-a-side, next minute you're involved in futsal, which is a goalkeeper and 4 players, and then you're working in CP football, which is, a goalkeeper and 6 players, 7-a-side. So, each one has its own differences and ways of working, for the goalkeepers, because all formats are different. So as a coach, you've got to think differently a lot of the time. You can't apply the same principles and ways of working in all formats, because all the laws of the game, the constraints of the game are all different. So the way you work with the goalkeepers, the way you build their practice curriculums has to be slightly different across different formats. Yeah, goalkeeping's goalkeeping. Their first priority is to keep the ball out of the net, but also the tactical side of each game is different for the goalkeepers, because both in and out of possession, the actual constraints and context of the game is different. So you have to develop them in a different way depending on the format that you're working in. So as a coach, you have to be diverse, you have to be adaptable, you have to recognise and understand and manage the differences in all those formats, and make sure that you develop the goalkeepers in relevance to the format that they're playing in. And that's been the biggest challenge for me, but it's been the proudest thing for me that I have actually accomplished, and being able to flick between the formats and adapt and change what I needed to for the goalkeepers I'm working with.
I mean, it sort of leads to a different type of question. The formats that you've worked across, do you feel that they've got an element of being able to be linked for the the specific area that you coach?
Yeah, I think as I said to you, it's not that you go into each format and you can completely wipe the slate clean and you have to start again. There are transferables, like for instance, futsal and blind football. The goalkeeper we've got now in blind football, Dylan Malpass, who is considered at the moment to be the best in the world, and I'm not saying that as a throwaway comment. He's been voted at the last World Championships and the last European Championships as the best goalkeeper in the world. So it's a fact. But we got Dylan across from futsal. So Dylan had started in mainstream football as a youngster. He was on the books at Birmingham City in their academy. Didn't quite make the grade. Went to university. Dropped in to futsal. Found that he had the skill set required for futsal. And then obviously, I was working with the blind squad, and we decided to bring or attract Dylan into blind football, and he just fit perfectly. So a lot of the skills that he's early learning, so his foundations from football goalkeeping, his default setting, I guess, in terms of his handling, his technical capabilities, diving, his 1v1 situations, and obviously his distribution, throwing, passing. That dropped into futsal. Then he will have taken the specifics from the game of futsal, which is slightly different, the constraints of the game, the context that you're playing in, the ball, the goal, it's different. So he would have had certain relearnings, retrainings, restructuring of his thought processes and his decision making. And then dropped into blind football, slight subtle differences again, obviously working with players with a disability, totally blind. Communication side of it is huge, so he would have had to pick that up and learn that very quickly. But what he's proven, what we've proven, is that you can take a goalkeeper from football, drop them into a different format in futsal, move them across into another format in blind football, and yet they can still adapt and change and tweak what they do to fit the format that they're working in. So if the methodology is correct, if the understanding of what the transferables are from both player and coach for that individual, then it is possible. But you have to understand, all elements, all aspects of the game, and also how to develop the goalkeeper in all those elements and aspects to enable them to be best equipped to go and perform in those different formats. And that's the key. So when people say to me, are the transferables from some of the formats that you've played in, into football? Well, the answer is yes. But the key is, there is a process, and you have to understand when and how to use them, and obviously why you're using them. You can't just go, oh, we like that, I'll use that. Well, that doesn't work. It's like with the futsal, techniques around blocking, spreading, split saves, foot saves. A lot of coaches see the end product, but they don't understand the process that goes in to develop the goalkeeper to get them to levels to be able to do that in the blink of an eye, or perform those actions in the blink of an eye. there is a process. So you can't just see a practice or see a goalkeeper perform an action and go, oh, yeah, we use that. Well, what's the process? Understand the process first, understand the methods needed to develop and educate the goalkeeper in those actions. And then you'll be onto a winner. And that's, for me, the best way I can explain it. And that's all I've done over the years, is immerse myself in the formats, understand what the roles and responsibilities of the goalkeepers are, recognise what's needed in terms of their practice and training curriculum and their physical development, psychological balance and so on through that process, and then educate them in that way. And that's the processes I've worked.
I mean, I've got a question that I'd like to ask before we speak to, ask questions from listeners that have sent in. But I just want to fast forward a little bit. As mentioned off air at the beginning of the call, more recently you've come away from your role of head of goalkeeper coaching with Bristol City Women. Mm-hmm. Again, just sort of a double-edged question here. What did your average week look like for people aspiring to be in that role, and how much of an impact did the travelling have?
Yeah, so the role itself, you might have to remind me of the second question if I get too deep into this one. I mean, look, it was classed as a part-time role, but it felt very much like a full-time role. Again, I think the travelling had a lot to do with that, because I was, on the road a lot. But generally, if I work forward from game day, so we'd play on a Sunday, and obviously home or away, Bristol or wherever we were playing. So we'd play the game, and then obviously immediately after the game, the analyst would code the game and send that to the coaches. We'd normally have that by Sunday evening. And then Mondays, generally for myself, the players would go in, the players that started would generally do recovery in the morning. I generally go in, do a session with the goalkeeper that didn't play or get minutes. And do kind of more of a physical session in the morning. I'd sometimes bring in a couple of the academy goalkeepers that we had at Bristol to do a session. Some of the outfield players that didn't get many minutes or no minutes at all would do a session with the assistant coach at the same time. After lunch, we'd then go into analysis. We'd have a look at the game and pick up some key points. We'd discuss what we needed to, and then obviously, if there's anything goalkeeping-wise, I'd discuss that with the keepers. Generally, everybody had Tuesday off, so for me that was a bit of a comfort, because it would be a day where I wasn't travelling. I could then pick up and focus on the other work that I had outside of Bristol. Wednesday would be in, so Wednesday and Thursday we'd then begin the forward planning for the next game on the Sunday. So one day would be in possession, the other day would be out of possession. So each day we'd go in the morning early, so I'd leave Birmingham at stupid o'clock to get to Bristol as early as I could, to sort of drop into the team meetings, which were generally around about 8:30, 9 o'clock before the players came in. And we'd basically go through, what we needed to sort of discuss about the opposition and how we were going to set up and things like that. So basically we'd then do our either in possession or out possession day. So I then sort of discussed with the coaches what the requirements were in terms of the goalkeepers. Are they needed with the team for the session? Have I got time to work with them? Sometimes I'd have them for quite a long period in the morning, and then they'd link in with the team. And sometimes I'd have them for very short periods, because the head coach would decide that they needed the goalkeepers in for longer periods, because we needed to work on certain practices that would involve the goalkeepers at length. But I was never possessive over that. I would always consider the needs and requirements of the head coach first before I thought about what we needed, in terms of the goalkeepers. So, each day would that Wednesday and Thursday would be the in possession, out possession days. I'd link what I was doing in terms with the goalkeepers. So let's say, for instance, on the Wednesday we did our in possession. My work would then be geared around the in possession part of what it looked like for our goalkeepers against the opposition we were coming up against. That would then link in with what they were doing when they're going with the team. So that was very important, to link what I did in with what we're doing when they go in with the team, and then it looks familiar. You can't just mishmash it and hope that the goalkeeper's going to pick it up. You have to try and link it if you can. And then obviously, if there's anything we needed to do after the session extra with the goalkeepers, I would do that. Generally, then the goalkeepers go to the gym, so I would obviously need to, if I needed to do analysis or anything else, I would do that. And in this time, obviously, I'm also organising and structuring set plays for the opposition, but that would be done a week in advance. So, we're talking, going back even further to get prepared. Thursday would be the opposite. So it would be, let's say we do our out of possession, again, linking the goalkeepers working, when my time with them, in with what they're going to do with the team when they join in. Similar type thing, go through set plays, that kind of stuff. Friday's generally off. And again, then Saturday, we will be in. Final preparations, any sort of last minute messages the head coach needs to get across, anything I needed to do with the keepers, we'd finish off. Set plays, we just go over those, do some live ones, and then ready and prepared to play on the Saturday. But the week itself, it wasn't just the days. Obviously during the evenings I was then, so we'd be preparing for one team on a Sunday, and I'd already be preparing the set plays and things like that, and goalkeeping profiles for the next team the following week. So you're kind of always a week ahead. So if you're not careful, you can get quite mixed up. But you've really got to have, a plan of action, and getting yourself prepared in the right order, and making sure that on your laptop and things like that, everything's as its place and it's in the right order, ready to go. When you get that shout, we need this, we need that. Can you give us that? Can you give us that? Presentations and so on and so forth. So it's quite a complex role. And they're busy weeks, and hence that's why spending too much time on the road was taking too many hours from me, and that's why I decided not to be there. So, what was the second part of that question, Mark?
It was just how much of an impact did the travelling have, and I think you've just alluded to it there. Because for me, as you mentioned, that was a part-time role, but seemed more like a full-time role, which leads me on really to your roles with the FA. Do you sleep? How do you manage to fit them all in?
That's the thing, and this, what I do isn't a hobby. It's my life, it's my job, it's a business. I've got a family as well, and I've now got, a grandson who we've recently just had the blessing of being brought into our family. So, I've got 4 children. I've got my wife Tracy at home, and balancing, balancing work and home life at times can get quite tough. So, and that was the other thing, you mentioned about my international work and my work with the FA, and, as well as doing the squad stuff, also I'm a coach educator in the futsal pathway and the goalkeeping pathway. And I also have my own academy in Birmingham, so finding the time for all of that, spending too much time on the road, it just kills hours for me. Hours that I need to prepare myself, the goalkeepers I work with, prepare things for coaches, for the other roles that I fulfil. And at times you end up spinning plates, and on occasion the odd plate falls off and crashes, and you can only spread yourself so thinly. I think that's probably my biggest downfall, is that I try and help so many people, try and please so many people all the time, and I spread myself too thin and ask too much of myself sometimes, and consequently you end up getting full up to the brim of what you're doing, and having very little time to sort of shut down and relax. So I think the lockdown period has been a bit of an enforced but welcome break and holiday for me, to sort of recharge, refuel, and really think about what I do and how I do it. And hence that's why the decision about moving away from Bristol came, and looking more realistically at how I can spread myself and help others more effectively by giving me more time and family more time, but also being closer to home and not having to travel so far.
And again, you mentioned you share your expertise as the lead tutor for the delivery level 1 and 2, goalkeeper specific course, as well as the futsal. Was tutoring something that came naturally as your career progressed, or was it always something you wanted to go into?
It was something I was invited to do. I think obviously there's a pool of coaches that deliver the message to coaches that want to work with goalkeepers and develop them and educate them. And, it's very nice to be asked to do that. I've been doing that since, I think, 2006, something like that. So, a long time. I haven't delivered, ironically, any courses for a couple of years. When I was living in Carlisle, I worked for the Lancashire FA and delivered their level 1s and 2s for many years. But since moving to Birmingham, obviously the Birmingham County FA, they have a structure, they have coaches in place, and it's not for me to try and jump on work and force people out of work opportunities. The County FA are aware and understand that I'm available if they need me to deliver the level 1s and 2s, and other county FAs, of course. So that's something that I haven't give up on. I haven't delivered for a couple of years, and that's something that I do miss, because I love educating others. To go and work with goalkeepers. There is a difference between coaching and coach educating. I'm still very hands-on in terms of that with the futsal. There's not many coaches in the country with the futsal knowledge that's required to develop coaches. So I'm still very hands-on, and I'm the lead in terms of that for the FA, in terms of driving the futsal goalkeeper coach education programme. So I'm still very hands-on with that, and I enjoy that. I love that, because it is, again, a different format, and many people benefit from that. So, but there is a difference. So you have to wear two different hats: one coach educator, and I think that is an art, being able to understand which is which, but also to blend them when you need to, because obviously at times when you're educating coaches, you're working with keepers. So in one hit, you can be coaching a keeper and then coach educating, and it's knowing when to flick the switch on and off as to which one you're doing at what moments, and that's very important. It is a bit of an art form, and one that I do very much enjoy.
And to top it, really, whilst all that has happened over your career, you've somehow found the time to publish a book, A Modern Approach to Goalkeeping. What drove you to publish that book, and is there any more in the pipeline?
No, well, it's a bit of a story. I was approached by a young author, Adam Woodidge, a few years ago now, to do a piece in a book he was releasing, The Anatomy of a Goalkeeper. And Adam and I met. We had a couple of meetings, and Adam just wanted to discuss with me, stuff about futsal, disability formats, and the differences from football, and how you're coaching them and things like that. And he put a piece in his book, and then Adam and I had a conversation, and I think the feedback he got from his book was that, the parts that I put in there were very much enjoyed by the reader, and Adam felt that there was probably a good opportunity or a need to publish one of my own. And I was a bit reluctant at the start. I'm not an egotistical individual, or feel that I need to sort of be in the public eye or anything. In terms of having a written piece out there about me, but in the end, I gave in to Adam's wishes, and we then set out on a process. It took us about 6 months, loads and loads of different meetings up around the country, a lot of travel, a lot of discussions, and literally Adam was just a sponge. I just spoke, talked to him, gave him bits of information and files and things, and he pieced it together. And thankfully, from my point of view and from the reader's point of view that we've heard from, the job he did was a fantastic job. He pieced it together brilliantly. And literally, what we wanted it to be was like a conversation between the three of us. And when I say the three of us, that's Adam, myself, and the reader. And that's the feedback we've had. It's very much like the readers in the conversation with Adam and myself. So, we talked about, how we now develop goalkeepers and work with goalkeepers, hence the name, A Modern Approach to Goalkeeping, because we're talking about how we develop and work with the goalkeeper in the modern game, not the modern goalkeeper. There's a difference. It's the goalkeeper in the modern game. The modern game has developed and evolved and developed the goalkeeper that we now see. So, it is about the goalkeeper in the modern game. And, there's bits in there about myself, about my story and my upbringing, and how I got into goalkeeping and coaching. But then really it's about, methodology, connection, building relationships, and all these different kind of things that go into coaching, and understanding the role, and about being the right type of person to be able to be a coach, I think. And that's what we try to do. So I think sometimes the title, gives the impression that it is just about goalkeeping, but it's not. It's very much about life learnings, about relationships and building connections, and methodologies and philosophies, and a whole host of different things. So not just about goalkeeping, it's about coaching, it's about life, it's about people. So I think others outside of goalkeeping, outside of football, even teachers, people in business, could very much learn from the messages that we've tried to deliver in the book. And hopefully that's what we've done with it. And who knows, in the future there may be a part 2, so we'll have to wait and see.
So where can the listeners get their hands on the book?
Yeah, basically they have to come straight to me, so they have to contact me, and the best way to do that is through my social media outlets. Obviously I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn through my name, but if people want to follow me on Twitter, they can follow me on Twitter, obviously at TEGK1, and I'm on Instagram as well, and slightly different, so that's at TEGK01. So very easy to remember. But if they're interested in the book and they want to get more info about it, or they want to purchase one, then they can contact me via any of those mediums, and just send me a direct message, or follow me. I'll follow them back, and then we can begin the process. So yeah.
Fantastic. You mentioned that obviously the modern day game has evolved and developed the goalkeeper for the modern day game. How much has the role changed from when you were playing to what you're coaching now?
Yeah, I think I look at coaching and the role of the goalkeeper. Coaching, it was very technical heavy. Literally it was around the goalkeeper's purpose and priority of defending the goal, and I guess defending the area, in terms of shot stopping, 1v1s, dealing with crosses, because obviously the game's changed now. We used to play with big centre forwards, and you had to deal with a hell of a lot of crosses in the game. The game's changed. Some teams don't even play with the number 9 now. And the way the balls are delivered into the box has changed. In terms of balls from wide areas and deep areas. So that's changed now. So when we work with goalkeepers, we have to develop them in a different way, in terms of the way goals are scored, finishes. We talk about the red zone, that zone from sort of the width of the 6-yard box up to the 18 or just outside, where most final contacts of finishes are made. And it's very important that that practice is developed and revolves around that. But also, like I said, in terms of dealing with balls from wide areas, you need crosses whipped, clipped, dipped, fizzed across the goal now, cut back. So many different ways now that the ball is delivered into the area. As I said, when I played, there was a lot of balls from wide areas thrown into the box, big centre forward, centre backs, goalkeepers challenging. That it's changed now, So, the way we work and coach our goalkeepers has changed. So, and of course, the goalkeeper is very much now the 11th player, and they're very much involved in the in-possession part of the game, especially in that, obviously, that defending third, we will call it, but in that third of the field in front of the goalkeeper. They're very much involved in the build-up of play and connection between teammates to keep the ball moving. So tactically now, we have to spend much more time working with our goalkeepers, their involvement in general play, and working with their feet, and we talk about, the stats tell us now that on average, the goalkeeper spends, in the game, especially at elite level, probably around about 70% of the time working with the feet, compared to 30% of the time working with the hands. And not all of those hand contacts are actually saves, So it's an interesting stat, but, how many coaches actually look at that when they're doing the sessions, and how many sessions are still you know, the 30% heavy in terms of handling and shot stopping and save making, compared to the 70% of working with the feet and ball contacts with the feet and passing and things like that. It's interesting now. It'll be interesting to see how many coaches bear that stat in mind when they're constructing practice to develop the goalkeepers, you know, and I think that's very important moving forward. I'm not saying that we need to flip it to that extent, but there must be a mixture now, very much a mixture. Goalkeepers not only working on their priority of defending the goal and keeping the ball out the net, but also working on their skills with their feet and developing their range of passing and their tactical awareness of when, where and how they need to pass the ball should they be in possession of it. So I think that's vitally important moving forward now, and that's the big changes that have happened, you know, from when I was playing. The tactical involvement of the goalkeeper now is huge compared to the way it used to be.
In your honest and personal opinion, what would you say are the most important attributes for the modern day goalkeeper?
Yeah, well, I think, as I said to you, you know, they've got to be, you know, technically, you know, they've got to have great technical ability. And again, that comes from both in and out of possession. You know, so again, when we talk about the out of possession, you know, defending the goal, defending the area, defending the space. So, you know, good hands, tidy hands, you know, so a range of catching capabilities, good diving technique, you know, for a multitude of different types of save, dealing with 1v1s. So 1v1s now, you know, we don't just talk about leaving the line to smother the ball, you know, and diving at players' feet. We're talking about blocking, you know, using the blocking shape, high and low block. We're talking about spreading, you know, so different ways in which the goalkeeper works in terms of dealing with 1v1s and through balls now. Already talked about, you know, what we would be termed as dealing with crosses, but I term it as dealing with high and wide balls, you know, or balls from wide areas, different ways in which that happens. And then, of course, you know, the distribution elements, you know, massive in terms of, you know, throwing, so different types of throw. And we can't forget that throwing is still a fantastic art, and very much should be used in terms of initiating and instigating attacks, you know. So, you know, we talk about passing and the, you know, you look at the likes of Ederson and other goalkeepers, you know, Pepe Reina when he came to Liverpool, and other goalkeepers, Van der Sar, you know, fantastic passers of the ball. But also, you know, you can't forget throwing. So, you know, we must look to develop the goalkeeper's passing range, you know, short, medium, long, you know, playing round, playing through, playing into, onto and beyond, you know, all these different aspects of the game they have to think about. And that's just technical, you know, they've got to be tactically aware and astute, understand their role in the game, both in and out of possession. You know, they've got to be, for me, psychologically balanced. You know, they've got to be able to sort of deal with mistakes. They've also got to be able to, you know, make decisions quickly, be robust and deal with difficult moments in the game. So psychologically, they've got to be balanced. They must be physically capable, of course, and the range of saves and the amount of distance the goalkeeper now covers in the game. They've got to be athletes, you know, they must be now. And they've got to have a range of movement that now equips them to move around in and around the goal in the area and the pitch the way that they need to. And I think, you know, finally, they must be socially and emotionally connected, both to the coaching staff and the team. And, you know, and that comes in terms of communication and information, instruction that they give, but also showing leadership and, you know, and very much having that confidence to sort of deal with peer pressure and be a pivotal and a major part of that social group. And I think that for me is what the goalkeeper in the modern game needs to look like. So an holistic approach to development now is the way forward for goalkeeping. And we must look at all elements of development in terms of developing our goalkeepers.
Fantastic. I'm sure there's some absolute gems in there for the listeners there. And just we sort of smooth our way out into our quick fire question round. There's just a few questions I've got to round up. What advice would you give to any aspiring goalkeepers who may be listening? what if there was one gem that you would give them?
Yeah, I think I couldn't probably sum it up in one. I think from my point of view, listen to good advice. Get the right people around you, and make sure that you're a good listener. We never know it all. We're never perfect. We don't know everything. So be a good listener and take information on board. I think work hard and work as hard as you can in every moment and every opportunity that you get. Work harder than the man next to you, literally. And that's the key. You will make mistakes, and as a goalkeeper, you've got to have broad shoulders. Things are going to go wrong, but I think what you have to do is try not to see them as mistakes, see them as learning opportunities, and build on that. So make the mistakes. Yes, that's going to happen at whatever age you are, from under sevens, under eights, all the way through to professional life. You're going to make mistakes as a goalkeeper, so you've got to be prepared to deal with them. But you've also got to find mechanisms to deal with them and move on from them. So try not to dwell on them. And that goes for coaching as well. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to get things wrong. You're going to mess things up. But don't be afraid for that to happen. That's part of life learning and a learning curve that we all go on. And I think if we get up any day, we wake up in the morning thinking that we know it all and that we're perfect, in my eyes, there's no point in getting out of bed. Because if you think you know it all and you've learned it all, what's the point? We haven't. We never will. And I think if you get up every morning with the attitude that in each given day you're going to learn something new, and for me that's the most positive, open mindset that you can start any working day with. Yeah.
And on the flip side, for football coaches specialising in goalkeeping, any words of wisdom for anyone on their coaching pathway or looking to get into that specialised avenue of goalkeeping?
Yeah, as I said, I've mentioned it before. Immerse yourself in the world of goalkeeping and in the game. Understand and recognise the huge role and responsibility that the goalkeeper now has in the team, for the team. Immerse yourself in that and learn as much as you can. Don't just focus on the technical side. Yes, that's a major part of developing goalkeepers, but upskill yourself in the tactical side of the game. Get to understand different philosophies of play. Look at the psychological side of the goalkeeper. Massive now, massive. For me, probably one of the biggest elements in terms of goalkeeping development. Yes, we talk about technical and tactical, but the mindset of a goalkeeper now, in terms of decision making, we talk about, people talk about mental illness and things like that. Now it happens, it goes on. We don't know in any given moment what our goalkeepers bring to a training session or to a game. And the better we can connect with those individuals, the more we understand them, the more we know about them, the more we can recognise the triggers and so on when there are either in up moments or down moments, the more equipped we are then as a coach to help and support them. And as I said to you, as a goalkeeper coach now, or somebody that's specialising in goalkeeper coaching, don't just look at the tech-tac, look at the holistic way in which you can help not only upskill yourself, but develop your goalkeepers, because that is what we are now working with, a very specialised, multifunctional, holistic individual. And that's the way we need to think about in terms of our development now.
Fantastic. And as I mentioned before, we head to the questions from social media. I've picked out some of the more challenging ones, should I say, that might start debate. I've just got one here. Is that you mentioned earlier in the conversation about how busy and how hectic your life has been with your different roles. Just how important is it for coaches to take time for themselves and just recharge your batteries? And if that doesn't happen, is there a fear or a likelihood of burnout and then a lack of quality in your delivery?
Yeah, I think I have a little saying, Mark. At times you've got to put the ball away, because I think we love what we do, and it's our life, But we have to remember, football is just a game. It's a sport. It's a game that should be done and played or coached for the love of it. And I think at times it can take over your life to the detriment of other things. And I know that more than anyone, in terms of family, in terms of spreading yourself too thinly in certain roles and certain situations. And I think as much as I'm encouraging people to upskill themselves, to immerse themselves in the football goalkeeping world, yes, do that, but also find a balance. Find a time when you can put the computer down, when you can put the ball away, when you can put the resources to one side, and you can, give time for family, give time for your kids, for your nearest and dearest, but also for you, for yourselves. I again recently took to reading again. I love to read, and I've got a huge library of books across all different forms of reading, from getting obviously football coaching books to biographies, to philosophy, psychology, self-help books, and really not because I'm in a period of desperation on it, because I'll look for other influences, for other things that can affect me, that can help me become a better person, and a better connector with people, and a better understander of people, and how everybody clicks and works in a different way. And I think take the time to do that, but also take the time to do nothing, to literally shut down, to go for a walk and get some fresh air, and spend a couple of hours walking. Or, I've been lucky enough to have periods recently where I've just literally sat in the garden and just listened to the environment around me, and just clear my head totally. And I think, me now going back into football after this period, you're going to see a different individual, because I've had time to recharge, to rethink. Some fantastic things have happened during this period of lockdown, but also some real negative stuff that could have affected me in a negative way, but I haven't allowed it to, and I've kept focused and kept in contact with the game, but also give myself time to relax and shut down. So I'm ready, and I think I've needed that time, but find time for it, during any given week, month that you can, to actually just give time to yourself, give some time back to you, to recover, recuperate, and recharge, and get ready for the next period of work that you're going into.
Again, I can understand what you're saying now with the spinning of the plates, and often one plate may smash. So I think that's a really important message for coaches who are immersing themselves in what is the beautiful game. I'd just like to move on to obviously some of the questions from social media.
Of course.
And again, I must just point out, this is obviously your personal opinion in relation to that. The first one, the first one is Sean, and he mentions, why do more and more goalkeepers appear to encourage younger keepers to push or parry the ball away, rather than the good old days of being taught to catch the ball?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think, and this is the danger now of the game being scrutinised and looked at 24/7. You could literally sit in your living room and watch football 24 hours a day if you wanted to, from somewhere in the world. And obviously, at the moment it's a little bit different because there's not that much play, but in normal circumstances you could literally watch it 24/7. I think the danger is that obviously the youngsters now, it's much more accessible for young goalkeepers to obviously watch the game and watch their idols and their heroes, but also for coaches, especially young aspiring coaches, to watch and look at the best goalkeepers in the game, and to see the way they work and the way they've had to adapt and develop, and they then pass that on to the goalkeepers that they're working with. And again, social media has a lot to answer for, and a lot to be responsible for, in terms of allowing platforms for individuals to put things on social media that can be very detrimental to others if they see it. And I think this is where we have to be very careful. But I also think it's about people's interpretation and what they perceive to be the right or wrong way of doing something. Ultimately, we have to recognise that whatever message we deliver, people will take it literally. and if we're not careful, we can affect people forever. Yeah. And this is the danger. And I think the key for what you're saying is to answer that question. You know, at top level now, there's so many different things that have affected the way the goalkeepers work. As I've said to you, the way the game's changed, but also, you know, one of the massive things that has changed over the last few years is the ball. You know, the balls are so light now, and they move so much in the air as they travel. And literally they can move, you know, feet as they travel, you know, 2 to 3 feet off a straight line as they move and travel. And you can see that sometimes when the camera pans behind. So the goalkeeper can get in a position thinking that they're in a great position to deal with that ball. And then suddenly, as it's traveling towards them, it's moving so fast. Ultimately, they're doing well enough to actually get something behind it, let alone catching the ball. And that's why you probably tend to see a lot of goalkeepers that, on occasion, that you would expect them to catch the ball cleanly, are actually just moving the ball away from goal into safe areas because they can't get a clean catch on the ball. So, obviously, in training, you know, there'd be circumstances and situations where I would imagine the coaches would suggest to the goalkeepers, and I know I do, that if you're not sure, then you have to move the ball away effectively, away from the goal, you know, as that last resort situation. Look, if you can catch it, if you can secure the ball, that's always going to be your first option. And that's what I would still educate the goalkeepers that I work with to do. So I would still educate my goalkeepers in the catching and handling techniques. That's without saying. But ultimately, if the ball is moving such, you know, either off a straight line or moving too fast, and the goalkeepers aren't sure, then it's their decision in that moment to decide that they can't catch it. They've got to move it away from danger. Now, ultimately, it's how and where they move the ball that's most important. And I think, you know, not allowing the opponent to have a second nibble of an opportunity is important. So moving the ball away to a safe area would then be the most important thing. I think that's probably the most thing that's had the most effect. There will be other things, you know, in terms of the environment, the conditions, but it could also come down to coaching. You know, the goalkeepers could be encouraged to do that, and that's down to the coach. That's down to their philosophy, their way of working, their way of thinking, and if they feel that's a more effective and efficient way of dealing with the balls in that way and that type, then that's down to them. I can't dictate that. But as I said, my first default for goalkeepers is to catch, to secure. If they can't, if they're not sure, then they move the ball away from danger into safe areas as effectively and efficiently as they can.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for that. The next question is from Gareth, who has a young lad in the academy. What advice would you offer to a young keeper who is transitioning from a 7 versus 7 goal to a 9 versus 9 goal? And what's the best way for them to cope with the size difference until, you know, that holy growth spurt that they will get?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. You know, you go back to when I played. You know, I was playing under 9, under 10s football, Mark, in full-size goals. Wow. You know, so imagine that back in the day. You know, when I first started playing junior football in the late 70s. You know, we played in full-size goals. We didn't have samba goals, mini goals, you know, and 3 or 4 different size goals moving through the ages. You started at under 8, under 9, full-size goal, all the way through to your adult. There was no changes. So imagine that, you know. But anyway, to answer the question, look, the transition is going to be difficult. I think, again, there has to be an expectation when the goalkeeper makes the jump, unless they have a rapid growth spurt during that summer transitional change, that they're going to concede goals because the areas behind them have become drastically bigger, you know. So they're going to have to understand and recognise that not mistakes as such, but they're going to concede more goals than they probably did in the previous season. I think that the expectation then from the goalkeeper, from the coaches, explained to the young goalkeeper that that's okay, you know, and we'll deal with that. So that's the first thing. And again, that affects the mindset of the goalkeeper somewhat as well, because they will probably be conceding more goals. So you're going to have to help them and pick them up on occasion, should they go into games conceding a lot more. I think what we would then have to encourage, again, if they're working in the smaller goals and as an evolving and developing goalkeeper, they probably tend to spend more time near the goal line, you know. So I think we've still then got to think about encouraging the goalkeeper in terms of the goalkeeping line and narrowing the angle to come down the line, you know, to get the relative positions that they would still need to. They're going to leave a little bit more space behind them and above them, of course, now with the bigger goals. And again, that's going to leave them open to chips, to lobs. That's going to happen. But we still need to encourage them to take up relative and correct positions, depending on where the ball is on the pitch. I think we also need to think about how we move them laterally, sideways. So the distances to the side of them are going to be bigger. So whereas before, you know, in terms of balls to the side of them, they could probably just push off and dive. They may now need to think about, right, I now might need to think about getting a step or two towards the path of the ball as it travels before I then dive. Mm-hmm. So encouraging the goalkeeper to move their feet to get closer to the ball as it travels would be a vital part. And obviously, you know, I've just talked about it there, you know, there might have to be some work and development done around their vertical leap to try and create a little bit more height for those balls that are driven above the head. But I think definitely, you know, looking at lateral movement, maybe little tweaks in their diving technique. So instead of it being a standing push dive, as I would call it, or a single step and dive, they may now add to the ball before they actually plant the foot and then dive, you know. So number of different ways, but I think it's more around the psychological side and the expectation placed on the goalkeeper by the coaches, by their teammates. They are probably going to concede more goals for a short period of time, but that will change once they become more aware of the goal behind them. They understand the distances that they can work in and around. And I think, as I say, if we understand that and we get them to understand that, give them the mechanisms to deal with that, then I think as goalkeeper coaches, that's the biggest part we can play as we move them forward.
Fantastic. I'm really engrossed in these questions. The next one's from Charlie, and it's more sort of linked with futsal. What transferable skills from futsal are best coached when working with young footballers, 11 and under?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously now, you know, I'll go the in possession side stuff first, because obviously in futsal, due to the constraints of the game, the size of the area that you're playing on, the goalkeeper is going to be more heavily involved. So there's a lot more opportunity for ball contact with the goalkeeper. So great opportunities to develop their speed of thought and their awareness, because obviously, you know, in futsal we have the 4-second rule. So it's not like in football where we have the 6-second rule for goalkeepers, but it never applies. You know, goalkeepers can hold on to it forever, you know, and the referees don't do anything. In futsal, there's a 4-second rule. So literally, when the goalkeeper gets possession of the ball, they have 4 seconds to release the ball. And if they don't, they're penalised. So the goalkeepers in futsal have to be doing a lot of work off the ball and before they receive the ball to understand the constant change in the pictures around them. You know, so when they get the ball, they have an idea of what they're going to do with it, because they haven't got time to stop the ball and think, right, what am I going to do? Because you've got 4 seconds. So you've really got to be doing a lot of work in the before. I tend to work with my goalkeepers on the before, the during, the after. So what's the before part? What are you doing? What pictures are you picking up? You know, what's your positioning? How are you supporting the play? So on and so forth. The during part is, right, I'm in possession. Now it's the doing. Now I'm performing an action. Now I'm delivering a ball. Okay. And then the after part, again, is the support, the communication, the reorganisation of the team, and so on and so forth. So the before, the during, the after are vitally important. But in futsal, it's the before and the during that are massive because of the time constraints on the goalkeeper. So in terms of distribution, great chance to work on, you know, first touch, control, you know, awareness of where they're going to pass, and then the types of pass, and so on and so forth, and obviously throwing as well. And then, you know, with the out of possession stuff, so, you know, I've already talked about 1v1s, blocking, spreading, That type of work is very prevalent in futsal. So the goalkeeper in futsal uses the block save a hell of a lot because of the nature and constraints in the game in terms of defending the area, or the D as we call it. So that we use the block save. And in Spain we call that the cross, because you're using all four limbs as save mechanism. So you got literally 4 points of a cross. So that's why they call it the cross shape. So you're using that type of shape. Obviously, again, we're now seeing a lot of goalkeepers in football make saves with the feet. Quite fashionable in the 60s and 70s, and you will see goalkeepers have used it in the past, but now you're seeing it a hell of a lot more. And again, purely and simply because of the speed and nature of the game, the movement of the ball. But in futsal, the goalkeeper will use their feet to make saves a lot when the ball is down the side rather than diving. And there's reasons for that. Obviously, we tend to play on hard floors, hard surfaces. So if you're diving too much, on those hard surfaces, you're going to hurt yourself. So dropping down into a split save or using your feet to save is probably a lot less painful, but obviously it's a lot quicker and more efficient and effective way of making the save. And also, if you're playing on like wooden veneered floors and so on and so forth, if you're diving, you dive, and in your momentum, you actually slide on the floor, and it takes you a while to recover and get back up. Whereas if you drop into a split save and you use your feet to make the save, you can literally bounce back up quickly and you're back in the play. So there's a lot of reasons why the goalkeepers in futsal use that type of save, the split save or the foot save. And it's also about the speed of the ball. By the time, the ball's been fizzed at the goalkeeper quickly, quite close to them and down the side of them. If we think about trying to use a collapse save or a low diving save, it's too late. Whereas literally you can throw a foot out and get contact with the ball. And it's a more quicker and effective and efficient way of making the save rather than diving. And I think, on occasion, that's what the football goalkeeper does. It's a more effective and efficient way of saving than it is diving. And I think, as I said to you before, it's about the when, where, how and why, we're using that technique that's pivotal and key. And also, if you're using the feet in football, you must recognise that wherever you move the ball to, there might be an opportunity for an opponent to pick up the second phase and get another finish. So you must make sure that you're moving the ball to safe areas if you're using the feet, because you're not securing it. And you're not probably able to deflect or parry the ball, as precisely as you would with the hand as you can with the feet. So there is a methodology to it. And again, that's down to coaching, and understanding the processes and why you're using it. And then obviously teaching the goalkeeper when, where and how to use it. So that's my thoughts on the transferables.
Fantastic, thank you. And the final question from our social media is from Chris, and his son has played in goals for the past 5 years and struggles a little bit when the ball is coming to him with pace at chest height. He's not sure how to deal with it as he gets caught in two minds. Any advice on the best way to deal with the situation?
Yeah, I think it comes down to, it's something that I've noticed. And again, it's around observation. And, again, kids will look at, their role models, their heroes. And we have kind of 3 techniques that we use in goalkeeping in terms of handling. So we have the W technique, when it's head height. It's a famous term that we use in terms of handling the W shape. And we have then sort of below the chin down to waist height, we use, or we would have a technique termed the cup technique. And then obviously waist down and below, towards the feet in particular, sort of knee height and below, we use the scoop technique. Now, the cup technique is a technique that I've seen maybe a little bit going out of fashion. Goalkeepers are tending to use what we would term that W technique now, a lot lower down the body. And I think that's down to their observation of goalkeepers in the modern game. I think it's down to observation of techniques that are being used by the goalkeepers, at top level. What you tend to find, and a good example is Jordan Pickford. He tends to sort of widen his stance and drop his body down lower to use that W technique, even though the ball's coming at a height that a perceived height that we would use the cup technique. So because it's probably more of a tidier contact, and a contact where they can actually catch with the hands behind the ball and then distribute quickly, rather than cupping the ball into the body, might take a fraction longer to get the ball in position ready to distribute. That could be a reason why it's going out of fashion a little bit. I think it also is to do again with the movement and the speed of the ball. I think the balls are that, that you can, like helium-filled balloons sometimes, and it bounces. It can bounce off the goalkeeper. So, if you see the goalkeeper take that ball into the chest, it can pop off them, throw them back. So I think that's probably another reason why some goalkeepers tend to want to use that W technique a lot lower down the body. So I think the challenge is that we still educate the goalkeepers in all of those three techniques, but also if they're not comfortable using that cup technique, it's finding a way in which they can alter and affect the height of the body, but still have the hands in a good position behind the ball, and obviously their elbows and arms in a good position to make sure they take the pace out of the ball, but maybe by dropping the body a little bit lower. But that would mean then widening their stance, a la Jordan Pickford. So I think it was Chris that asked the question. Might be worth having a look at, and sourcing some footage of goalkeepers in the modern game doing that and using that W type technique at a lower height on the body, and seeing how they move their feet and affect their feet to drop the body down, but still be balanced when they're actually catching the ball at a lower height, but using that W technique. So quite interesting, a great question, and hopefully I've helped a little bit with the answer I've given.
And I'm sure any feedback we get from, but when this goes live next week, we'll feed back into you, Tony, because I'm sure there's been some absolute gems in there for them. As I say, I'm engrossed. I'm not someone who specialises in goalkeeping on more outfield, but to hear that expertise is fantastic. Thank you for answering those. And just as we now slide out, I've taken up 90 minutes of your time early on a Sunday morning, and
that's fine.
What does the future hold for you now once football safely resumes?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the football gods are going to bestow on me next. I'm now obviously not having to travel as much as I was. I'm still very much going to be doing my FA work. We're going to be waiting for that to start again. I don't think that's going to start in the very immediate future. I think we're going to have to wait until club football's back up and running before the international circuit starts again. So I'm probably looking at, I don't know, late August, September, October for that to start. I very much want to get back into club football. As I said, I'm talking with a couple of organisations at the moment around fine details, around opportunities. But I'm always prepared to listen to offers and opportunities of work, whether that be in the women's or the men's game. For me, it's football. And I don't feel that me being in the women's game has been to the detriment of me. I love every minute that I've had working in the women's game. And if the next job is back in the women's game, then fantastic. I'm more than happy for that to happen. And I've worked with some brilliant coaches, some fantastic head coaches, and some wonderful goalkeepers. I've been blessed to work with some of the best in women's football most recently, and I'm more than happy to continue that. So let's wait and see. I don't know. Who knows with football what's around the corner? But there's still plenty of life in me yet. I'd like to be doing this for another 15, 20 years. And, I want to be doing it as physically, on the pitch as I can. The theoretical side will come, and the consultancy type stuff will come later on in my career. But I've still got masses to offer, and I will be back in the game very soon. Once I've decided where I want to go, and continuing to enjoy and love working with goalkeepers and doing what I do. I'm
sure whichever club is lucky enough to have you on board is, you're going to do extremely well and be fantastic at what you do. And this is the bit at PCT and on the podcast, we do like to put you on the spot a little bit. I know we do get the questions over, but this is more of a quick fire, but the answers never seem to be quick fire. What is your best moment in football to date?
I think we've talked about one already. Obviously, the Paralympics in Rio. That'll stay with me forever. Not just the football part, but just the events. Actually being at one of the biggest world events in sport ever, and going to Brazil, walking into the Maracana and doing the closing ceremony, and it's just unbelievable. So that experience, the whole thing, not just the football part, that will obviously be one of the most important. I think, probably it's strange. I had a game that I played for Carlisle United, and there's a lot behind it. We won the league that year, and we played at Chesterfield on a Tuesday evening. And there was a lot on the game. We'd won the league, but Chesterfield still needed to beat us to go up. And I had some personal things going on in my life. I'm not going to talk about it here, but I went out and played and literally had the game of my life. And it's on YouTube. You can see it. And Carlisle fans still to this day talk to me about it and ask how I performed the way I did. And I remember that I think the following day I got 10 out of 10 from the local paper for my performance. It's not an ego, I think it's just a fact. But that night was unbelievable. And it was one of those nights where, as a goalkeeper, just everything I touched, everything I did, just went perfect. I saved the penalty in the last 5 minutes, I think it was. And it was just unbelievable, and I'll never forget that night. And it was a great night. I think not so much for an honour or an achievement. I've internationals and things like that. I've done all that, and I've won medals and trophies. But I think that night, in terms of performance, managing and dealing with adversity, I said there's a lot of things going on, but being able to do that and still yet go and do the thing that I love most to the best of my ability, dealing with pressure on the pitch, off the pitch, just for me was momentous in a personal way. And for me, that night will stick with me forever, as it probably will for a lot of Carlisle United fans. So that I'll never forget that, and I guess they won't. And that was probably the biggest night for me personally in terms of football.
Goosebumps off that. Best friend in football?
I have a saying in football: you don't have friends, you have acquaintances, because we move so often in between teams, clubs. I've built up lots of friendships. I wouldn't say I have a best mate. I have a lot of dear friends. My best mate probably is my wife. She's my wife, she's my love, she's my best mate. But in football, I have a lot of friends. I guess an individual that I'm really closely connected to is a guy called Keith Mayer, who is a dear friend of mine. We just connected a number of years ago, and Keith and I just hit it off. We're kindred souls, and we can talk to each other about anything. And he's an unbelievable person, a great coach. He's an author now in his own right, and we still talk regularly. And he's been a massive help to me, and I would consider him one of my best friends. But I also have a lot of other friends that I would consider to be dear friends. But as I say, in football, you have acquaintances, not friends as such.
No, fantastic. You can answer this as a player or as a coach perspective. Toughest opponent?
Yeah. Alan Shearer. So as centre forwards go, I don't think this country has produced any better. That's arguable and subjective, of course. There were some great centre forwards, but I think when you're actually in a game against him, and literally out of nothing, he just conjured up a goal. I played against him over 2 legs in a cup tie, and the year Blackburn won the Premier League, I was at Huddersfield. We played him in the League Cup, and I played him against him in 2 games, and just unbelievable. And as a centre forward, from my point of view, his general play, his hold up play, his range and way of scoring goals was phenomenal. And over the 2 legs, he scored 3 against me. So, he was probably the toughest opponent. I played against some big players, and I've enjoyed some fantastic games, but he would probably be the toughest that I've come up against.
Oh, fantastic. Again, this could be answered as a coach or a player. Who's the best trainer?
Hard question, because obviously, I've seen a lot. I've worked with a lot, and I think that's that's something that comes from within. I think as a professional, then you should work as hard and train as hard as you can every day. You'll go through peaks and troughs and ups and downs, but I think as a professional footballer, that's your job to train as hard as you can and as best as you can in any given moment that you are on the pitch. As I've proven, it can quickly, in the blink of an eye, be taken away from you. I never envisaged at the age of 30 not playing football. That was my life. It was everything I had, and probably as a goalkeeper, I had another 10 years in me to go and play. But in one instance, it's taken away. So, you asked me the question, it's hard to answer because I've worked with some unbelievable people and players, and it would be hard to single one person out. I wouldn't want to do that. But what I can say is that football is a gift. And as a professional, as a player of any level, don't ever wish your time away from football because it can quickly be taken away from you and you're not able to play again. So enjoy every moment, work as hard as you can in every moment, and just take football as a joy, that you are capable and able to do it, because one day you're not going to be able to. And I'm a prime example of that. And it's hard, it's gut-wrenching, it breaks your heart, but ultimately I'm still involved, and I know that I can give something back now as a coach rather than doing it as a player. So can't answer it individually, but that's my advice to anybody.
No, fair. That's great. Best player you've played with? Is there
Again, played with some great players across the years. I think probably in terms of drive, desire, game understanding, knowledge, good all-round person. Derek Mountfield, centre-back, played for Everton in the 80s, won, the what is now the Premier League, obviously back with Everton, Cup Winners' Cup, Derek came to Carlisle, sort of the later years of his career, but unbelievable for us, in terms of his knowledge, experience, and just, his legs to his own admission, probably at that time, we're on the way out, but just his tactical awareness and his understanding of the game got him out of troublesome situations, whereas others wouldn't have been able to. And great talker, great communicator, great driver of people. So Derek was a privilege to work with and an honour to work with, and I'm blessed to have been able to play behind him on numerous occasions, when we were at Carlisle. So there will be others, but again, you asked me to name one. So in that sense, I will name Derek as one of the best I've played with.
Fantastic. Biggest role model or influence during your footballing career?
That's a toughie. I think on a personal note, would have to be my mum and dad. They drove me as a kid, and took me everywhere, gave me every opportunity to be, become a professional. I'm not going to say they forced it upon me. They always left it in my hands, but I can't thank them enough for what they did over the years. So they would be my role models and give me great inspiration and drive and determination to be the best I could be and to get to the top level. So I think, obviously, and again, a personal note, my wife Tracy, she puts up with a lot, and she fantastic in terms of, never ever saying to me, you can't do that, or we need you here to do this or that. No, she knows what I do, why I do it, and she understands. So she's a role model, she's my inspiration, she's my driving force, she's my purpose, and that's important, because she's the closest to me, and it's important that I have somebody like that around me. I think in terms of coaching and playing, I think as a kid, my hero was Tony Coton at Birmingham City, because I was a big Birmingham fan for my sins. But Tony was the goalkeeper at that time, and I was blessed to see him, to watch him, and he was a great support when I was a youngster. So he would have been my role model as a player. As a coach, I've worked with unbelievable people, fantastic coaches over the years. I think it would be disrespectful for me to single anybody out, in terms of my role model. But I've learned so much from so many different people. And as I said to you early on in the conversation, I've absorbed so much from so many, and it's helped mould and shape me to become the coach and the person and the individual that I am today. So for those unnamed individuals, I thank them, but I have many, many role models, too many of which I could name one in terms of coaching, but hopefully that doesn't disappoint you in terms of my answer.
No, I think it's one of the harder questions because, as you say, we work with many great acquaintances, and it would be disrespectful to name but one. But final sort of couple of questions now. Describe yourself in 3 words.
Empathetic, driven, and calm.
I think you've been the quickest to answer that one, Tony.
I think I just I think I would like to think that anybody that meets me would suggest probably the same. So hopefully that helps and people will understand all of those 3 words. But I guess that's me in a nutshell.
No, fantastic. And the final one from me, and it's a bit selfish really, is there anybody you would recommend or like to hear on our podcast?
I think I've just suggested, I suggested Keith Mayer, who's a fantastic friend of mine, an unbelievable person. I think he understands the game, he understands the player. I think for your listeners, it would be amazing to listen to Keith. I think you'd have to probably double your time in terms of the time spent talking to him and putting out on air, because that's Keith. He's a carer and a sharer. Yeah. And, if you have 20 questions come from social media, at the end of the conversation, he'll answer all 20 for you if you want him to. Yeah. That's Keith. So I think in terms of that, I would suggest, contacting Keith and maybe trying to get him on. I guess a lot of your listeners may have heard or listened to Keith because he and his son David, they've recently launched their book, Gold Dust, and they've got a podcast now they do themselves. So I think to get Keith on would be a big coup for you. If I can play a part in that and influence that, then I'll try. He'd be one person I think your listeners would get so much value from. So if you can get Keith, get Keith.
I'll be sure to drop him a message. And I know obviously he's got his own commitments with his own podcast, and obviously you mentioned that his book that's published. But Tony, I mean, look, I know we've been speaking for a couple of weeks to arrange this, and I just want to say a massive thank you early on a Sunday morning for getting up, speaking to me, and just sharing the absolute wisdom and knowledge you've got. I've enjoyed it. I've scribbled so many notes down, and I'm sure our listeners are going to really enjoy the content. So again, thank you ever so much. When football is safe to resume, I hope that, and I wish you all the success. I'm sure you don't need that from us, but I'm sure that you'll be a success in wherever you go to next. And when it does return, you'll enjoy it. And also congratulations on the birth of you mentioned your child there.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure. As I say, I'm a carer and a sharer myself, and these kind of conversations, and I've done many over this period that we've all been sort of in terms of podcasts, webinars, and there's nothing better if we can't be on the pitch. There's nothing better than doing it theoretically, in conversation or via webinar and so on and so forth. So it's been a pleasure. Whatever time of the day or week it is, it doesn't matter to me. It's sharing the knowledge, and hopefully the listeners will get the benefit of it. But as I said, I've already given you my social media outlet contacts, so more than happy to have further conversations should people want more elaboration around what we talked about today. So thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
No, thank you, Tony. And again, we wish you all the best, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. However the weather is where you are, it's a little bit windy here, so hopefully you enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Brilliant. Thanks, mate. And
cheers.
Stay safe.
Speak soon, mate. Thank you.
As we spoke about in the podcast, Tony has published a book labelled A Modern Approach to Goalkeeping. If you're interested in getting yourself a copy, you can get your hands on a signed copy by messaging Tony direct via Twitter or LinkedIn and quoting PCT coaching. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoy the content that we're trying to bring to you. Don't forget, new episodes will be released every Monday. You can find us on the iTunes Store, Spotify, and if you want to see the video, you can see it on our YouTube channel, PCT Football Coaching.